The economic situation. The economic situation was very similar to the social atmosphere, which was clearly illustrated by the Arab way of life. Trade was the most common means of providing livelihood. However, trade's journeys could not be undertaken unless security was granted to the caravan routes and there was peaceful coexistence between the tribes. Two two necessities lacking in Arabia, except during the sacred months within which the Arabs held their assemblies of Uqaz dul Majaz, Majana, and others. Arabia was the farthest of the lands from industry. Most of the industries, like knitting and tanning, were done by craftsmen coming from Yemen, Hira, and the borders of Syria. There was a primitive farming and livestock industry within Arabia. Almost all Arab women were adept at spinning yarn, but even this practice was continually threatened by wars. On whole, poverty, hunger, and deprivation on basic necessities like food and clothing were the prevailing economic features in Arabia. Ethics. We cannot deny that pre-Islamic Arabs were involved in numerous evil practices. Social vices and evils utterly rejected by reason were widespread among pre-Islamic Arabs, and this could never overshadow the highly praiseworthy virtues that were found simultaneously, of which we may mention the following. 1. Hospitality. They used to compete with each other in hospitality and take utmost pride in it. Almost half of all their poetry was about praiseworthy or improper manners of entertaining one's guests. For example, if a guest were to visit a man suffering from a severe cold and hunger, having no wealth besides a she-camel upon whom the lives of his entire family depended, even so, he would slaughter it just to feed his guests. They would not hesitate to incur heavy blood money and other related burdens just to stop bloodshed, and consequently be object of praise and eulogy. Among their foremost qualities was their praise of wine drinking, not because it was worth boasting by itself, but because it was a means of displaying hospitality and indulgence. For this reason, the grapevine was called kharam. The same word used for honor and wine was called the daughter of kharam. Looking at the collection of odes and poetry of the pre-Islamic period, one discovers that it is filled with chapters upon chapters of praise and boasting. Gambling was also another of their practices closely associated with generosity. Since the proceeds would always go to charity, even the noble Quran does not play down to the benefits and that are derived from wine drinking and gambling, but also says, and the sin of them is greater than their benefit. 2. Keeping covenant. For the Arab, to make a promise was to run into debt. He would not care for the death of his children or the destruction of his household, all for the sake of upholding the deep-rooted tradition of keeping one's oath and pledge. The literature of the period is rich in stories highlighting this merit. 3. Sense of honor and denial of injustice. This attribute developed mainly from a surfeit of courage and a keen sense of self-esteem. The Arab were always in revolt against the slightest hint of humiliation or disdain. He would never hesitate to sacrifice himself to maintain his ever-alert sense of self-respect. 4. Firm will and determination. An Arab would never lose an opportunity that contributed to keeping up an object of pride or standing of honor, even if it were at the expense of his life. 5. Forbearance, perseverance, and mildness. The Arab regarded these qualities in great with great admiration. No wonder his impulsiveness and audacious lifestyle was sadly in need of them. 6. Pure and simple Bedouin life. This lifestyle was clean from the trappings of the deceptive urban appearances and was a driving reason behind his nature of truthfulness and honesty, and the detachment of the intrigue and treachery. Such priceless ethics, coupled with the favorable geographical position of Arabia, were the factors that lay behind selecting the Arabs to undertake the burden of communicating the message of Islam and leading humanity down a new course of life. In this regard, these ethics by themselves, though harmful in some areas, are in need of modification in certain aspects, were in all of inevitable to the ultimate welfare of humanity, and it was the task of reinformation that Islam performed. The most priceless ethics, next to the keeping ones, covenant, were no doubt their sense of self esteem and strong determination, two human qualities indispensable of combating evil and eliminating moral corruption on the one hand, and establishing a good justice oriented society to the other. To sum up, the life of the Arabs in the pre-Islamic period was rich, and other countries' virtues which do not need to be enumerated.